Hello everyone and welcome to the VE Studio 2019.3 feature release video. This time around we have something we're pretty excited to present to you. This has been a customer request from multiple customers for quite a while now, and that is the removal of 3ds Max as our sole modeling tool for the VE Studio workflow. Now you can use whatever modeling tool you want, Maya, Blender, Modo. As long as you can get it into an FBX format, then our workflow can use it. So this will work through our content import wizard just the same way that Max Models would. You just take your FBX, drag and drop, and you can import it through that way. Or through Unity in the content window at the bottom, you can add a new model. The same way that you would add Max Models, you can add FBX models. This is going to do the exact same stuff behind the scenes. It's going to copy the FBX in the right spot. It's going to update the database with a new component. All that kind of stuff that it does for Max Models, it'll do for FBXs now as well. Now, we didn't remove the old Max model process. It's still completely viable to use that process, and there are still a couple benefits to using 3ds Max. Max tends to be a little bit better at retaining the connection back to the source material due to the way that Max tracks geometry. Max tracks things at the Max ID level, whereas the FBX itself is tracking things at the FBX level, so it's one step removed from the source material. Max just tends to be a little bit better at tracking object renames, as well as if you move objects within the hierarchy within the source material itself. The content processing system also auto-detects if the Max model changes. If you use FBX as your source file, you have to remember to re-export from your modeling tool. In addition, when you add a component to the project, it copies that Max or the FBX file to the right location. So when you do re-export from your modeling tool, you have to make sure you're exporting the FBX to the correct place so that our content processing system here can pick it up. It all sounds rather obvious. I mean, we're using the FBX format, which is an intermediate between the source modeling tool and Unity. So there's going to be those challenges rather than using the source materials themselves with the Max pipeline. But it's just something to mention, just something to be aware of. Now, once we have that in the scene, we have our engine compartment here, which many of you have worked with in our labs and our demonstrations. It works just like importing a Max model. We can select objects here, go to the behaviors tabs, apply behaviors to them, and start working with them as normal. All of this information is captured on our documentation site, docs.disi.com. Particularly our setting up a new model page, we now have sections for importing FBX files, or manually importing FBX files alongside of our Max ones. But the workflow is pretty similar to the Max one, so if you're familiar with that, it's not too difficult to get started with FBXs. Those of you who are using version control to control your projects, we have a new run mode for our merge utility. What we found, we tend to use TeamCity in-house to control our continuous integration for our builds. And if there were ever a merge conflict that the TeamCity server couldn't handle, then it would pop up the UI, which is not ideal because you'd have to have someone go into the actual machine and resolve the issue before it could continue. So we added our non-interactive merge mode for version controls to use. At the bottom here, you'll just add this non-interactive flag onto the end of it. And if the merge can't be resolved automatically, then the application will just return and it'll give you an error code. So you can have your continuous integration tool of choice notify you that there's been an error and you need to handle it, but it doesn't pop up the window and you don't have to actually go into it at that time to fix it. You can have that be surfaced to you in a report. Over the first part of the year, we've been working hard at making VR easier to use and more robust and more in line with what we have in our desktop offerings. But one thing that we left out is the ability for deployed targets to run VR easily. We have that for our desktop targets, where we just have a script that gets put on your desktop via the installer, and you just double click that to run it. But we didn't have one for VR. So we created a new script called our Start All VR script. Our Start All script is our normal desktop script. By default, you don't have to do anything. When you go and create your installer and you package it up, we've changed the installer script so that it includes all of these batch scripts in your installer itself. Now, if you don't want VR or you want to restrict your user from accessing it, you can either remove these batch scripts when you go to create the installer or just tweak the install script itself to remove that script from the installer so it doesn't get packaged up. The one final thing that we had a customer request. You'll see at the bottom here in our release notes, we have one additional project step. The customer request was they wanted to be able to specify 0 hints. In the past, a 0 hint value would specify that hints are unlimited. The user can ask as many as they want. Our customer wanted us to say the student is allowed to ask hints at all. So if they ask for 1 hint, they just immediately fail. So what we did is we converted our limits here. Rather than having to specify 0, we just put a checkbox on there. So let me load up our training assistant here. I'm in authoring a lesson. You can see here now we have checkboxes next to the time limit and hint limit. Once you click one of those, then you can edit this to be whatever you want. But it's listed here under the project steps because if you have a non-zero hint limit or time limit in here, you just need to come in and click the checkbox to have your changes take place. As always, with our notes, you can come on to the latest release notes to see the full set of features, tasks, and bugs. And as always, feel free to reach out to VE Studio support with any questions or concerns you have setting this stuff up. I'll see you all next time.